Welcome back to this week's episode of Crack the DAT, all things helpful, predent related. Thanks for tuning in. As always, I'm super excited to help you guys along this journey. I remember how lost I felt at times and how confusing some things were with this whole process. So I'm really excited to help you guys, and I really hope that these videos every week have been kind of light and helpful and just gave you some tips along the way, because that's ultimately the end goal here. So as always, I'll pull up the PowerPoint and we can just start breaking it down. Don't forget to use the codes, the discount codes, because always super exciting and helpful. We'll have a 50% off winner at the end of this, and as always, we'll have everyone gets the 10% off code now for just tuning in. So yeah, this week is all things choosing the right dental school and choosing which one to apply to. So we're going to go through a bunch of tips like that. So choosing the right dental school to apply to. So first, let's start this. Discounts to crack the DATs.
The SN1 reaction is the
In keyholes or apertures, you're given an object.
Figure out the molar mass of it. So we were given the mass, and you get.
So for 10% off, as always, every week everyone gets the 10% off. So the code is GoDentalSchool10. You can use that and get 10% off your subscription. Also, you can share it with your friends, get 10% off for them. Anyone can get 10% off. So definitely use that code GoDentalSchool10. And then also stay tuned, and we'll announce the 50% off winner at the end of this podcast. So first, last week's question. So as always, every time you guys ask a question, I will answer at the start of the next week. So last week I had one question that was, how long did you study for? So that kind of relates back to one of my earlier podcasts about study schedules. I ended up studying for probably, I want to say about a month. So about 4 or 5 weeks. I was kind of intermittently studying, so really sporadically I would take like a practice test or do some questions or do some PAT throughout my junior spring. And then, but I had some really hard classes happening. I had some personal stuff too, so I was not fully dedicating my entire time to the DAT, but I was also taking biochemistry and physiology, which are really helpful to the DAT. So I was kind of studying while not actually like explicitly studying. And then right when school ended, after I finished my exams, I went into grind mode and studied every day, all day, for like 12 hours a day for 4 weeks, and took like 2 days off. But again, that was literally just what worked for me, and that's kind of how I motivate myself. That's not going to work for everyone, and that's definitely not a universal study schedule to follow. That was just my personal experience. Okay, so also, as always, keep asking questions. I love answering them, and I think it's super helpful to hear other people's perspectives. As a kind of a reoccurring theme that we've kind of run into through this series of podcasts is every person's journey is completely different. So I think the more exposure you can get to other people's experiences, the better off you will be in the long run. And you can find something that resonates with you in particularly. So keep asking questions. I'm ultimately here to be a resource for you and to help you along this journey. So I love hearing questions, and I love engaging with and being involved with pre-dent students. So always feel free to do that. So to start off with choosing the right dental school, I wanted to just say, as always, this is a very personal decision, and it's not universal. So there is no right or wrong prioritization of these different factors that come into play when deciding what dental school to apply to. There is no universal, this is how you need to apply, this is what schools you need to apply to, etc. This is a very personal experience that is going to be, you're going to come to a conclusion by weighing a lot of different factors, and some factors you're not going to weigh, and sometimes you are going to weigh in. So just take this with your own critical mind and really think about your own personal situation. So yeah, prioritize the following categories based on, so I'm going to show you a bunch of categories that should be considered while applying to dental school, but being considered also could be, hey, I thought about this. That doesn't actually fall into a category that's going to sway me left or right when choosing to apply or not. So you just don't think about that category again. Other categories are going to be like, oh, that's actually a really high priority on my personal journey that I need to make sure I find a school that fits into this box. So you're going to use that and prioritize that. So prioritize the following categories based on your own personal needs and desires. Also, as always, think critically about your situation. So don't be too optimistic or pessimistic. Say you say you want a big city, but you hate noise and you're from a small town, you've never been in a big city. Don't be too optimistic in saying that, oh, my 22, 23, 24-year-old self is just going to find a new love for cities. If you don't love cities, you don't love cities. Don't push a big city on you. Also, wanting a small program, but you've always gone to a state school and you perform better in large environments, you like the resources, the socialization, etc. Don't be too pessimistic saying you want a certain thing when you don't actually. That's what I mean by that. Just kind of think critically about your situation, and use these as a guideline. Don't use these as a Bible. And these are also all things that I kind of came up with, and I'm sure there's other resources out there too that you can also look for and kind of use to really capture the whole picture of what kind of dental experience you're looking for. So the first thing that I want to talk about is GPA and DAT. So stay within your range, and what I mean by that is there's a lot of resources out there that kind of give you a guideline of what the school's average accepted GPA and DAT scores are, and you don't want to sway too far from that because applying to dental school is very expensive. If money's not a thing and you don't care about spending and you want to apply to 20 schools, sure, go ahead, be my guest, apply to 20 schools. But if you want to be conscientious of that, it gets really expensive. Each school is like $100 or something like that. And then you have supplements, which are also like $100. So you're racking up a big bill just to send your application in, and you could be entirely rejected, not even get an interview. So that's kind of why I start with GPA, DAT, because you kind of want to just eliminate edges, eliminate you're like, I'm not going to go there. That's just not even on my list, or that I'm way too above all of that. Like, I'm not going to get in. Also, I think this is a really important thing that a lot of people don't really talk about is there really truly are no quote unquote safety schools when you're applying to dental school. What I mean by that is I feel like in college, when I was prepping to apply to colleges, we kind of always talked about like a reach school, high reach, or safety, and you kind of knew your chances of getting in based on that. But I can tell you, I was not accepted, didn't even get interviews from schools that I had way over their GPA and DAT scores. And that's just, I attribute that to them also wanting to play the game and wanting to have good, high retention rates. So they're not going to reject someone that they know or they think they know is just never going to go there. So kind of, it's a game for you and for them. So it's as much as you want to go to that school, it's as much as they want you there or think that you're a fit. So if they just think that you're outrageously applying because you think that you could get in and they know that, they're not going to accept you. So that's what I mean by there's no safety schools. Don't send out applications that you're just sending out because you want to have a safety net, because truly there really is no safety net. And like I said, I got rejected from schools that I frankly should have gotten into. So it's always a shot in the dark. So be intentional with the schools you choose to apply to. Is just where I stand with that.
Succeed on your dental admission test. Study less and score higher. Check Crack the DAT now at crackdat.com.
The next kind of big factor that you should consider in applying is your location. So do you want a big city? Do you want a rural area? Do you want to be close to a city but not in the city? Do you not care if you're around the city? Do you want to be close to your family? Do you want to be close to your friends? Do you want to be close to your significant other? Are you going to factor that in when you're applying? Does it matter? Does it not matter? Do you like big cities? Do you like small cities? How do you cope with city life versus non? What kind of resources do you have in the city? Access to airports, proximity. Do you need a car? Do you not have a car? Just stuff like that, where it's not necessarily totally, again, it totally could not even be a factor that you even think about, but that is a factor that I know a lot of people do consider. And I think big city proximity to family is mostly always a consideration for a lot of people applying to dental school. So definitely just think critically about your situation and how you kind of fall, what category you fall into with regards to location. Another note I wanted to put about location is, they say, I don't know the statistics, but they say that a high rate of people who attend a school in a certain area end up settling there and practicing there, because you build a network and you kind of get exposed to those around you who are also practicing there, and it's just easier to stay and easier to establish yourself as a practicing dentist after school. If you're going to a residency program, that's a little different, because then you could go somewhere else, and that's where you would probably think critically about that. But just kind of thinking about that, taking that into consideration too, if you want to do general practice, like, really, is this a city, is this a location, for example, like, is California a place where I want to stay? Or would the Northeast be a place I want to stay? Or would the South be a place that I want to, like, settle? Kind of, that could also be a consideration for location. So next one is size. So size of the school. There's a lot of different things I put for this one, because I think this encompasses a lot of different genres for choosing schools. So specifically size of your class. So large class size, small class size. I know they range from like 30 kids to like 200 plus kids. That's a really big difference. And trying to choosing which ones you want, which ones you are used to. Also within that, class size as in cohort size. So maybe you have a class of 200, but you get put into like a small cohort to go to lab, or you rotate with like 10 people to go to sim lab, or you rotate 10 people to go to didactic, stuff like that, where you kind of need to look into the school to specifically see how they kind of set it up, because you could have, and also another thing that goes with that is student to faculty ratio, because you could have a 200 plus class size, but then have student to faculty ratio be like 5-1, and then you're actually similarly having experience of really involved faculty where you're not getting lost, you're not being a small fish in a big pond, you're essentially being a big fish in a small pond, because you have such intense watch and help from faculty members. Other things I wanted to note for size is the university it's attached to or affiliated with. So if it's its own school, or if it's attached to a large university, like I'm trying to think of ones, but like, for example, Ohio State, like, that's a huge undergrad and huge presence in the whatever league they play in, and that's a consideration. Do you want that kind of experience where you can go to games, or Michigan, for example, where you can go to games, you can kind of be rah-rah with like your campus members, or do you kind of want like a school that's attached to a small school, like the smaller schools out in California where they like don't have the same sort of presence in an undergraduate campus. Also considering if the school has multiple graduate programs, so how your graduate program is going to be incorporated into other graduate programs, like if there's a separate graduate campus, or if it's kind of intermingled with other graduate campuses, or the undergraduate campus is off to the side and all the graduate programs are kind of dispersed around it, just kind of like the layout of what that looks like, to see like how intermixed you're going to be with other kids or other adults, young adults around your age. Also, does the school not have as much breadth in graduate programs? So maybe the school only has like a dental school and a nursing program. Then you're not going to have the same sort of cohort of graduate students as you would in a different school that had all graduate programs. Another thing to consider is specialties. So what I mean by this is the specialties. So are specialties available? So what specialties are available? So not all schools offer all specialties within their programs. So if they don't offer the specialties, which ones are available? Do they have ones that you might be interested in? Do they not have ones that you might be interested in? Also, a big consideration within that is, do they have residents for your specialty programs? So what I mean by that is some programs have the specialty, but they don't have residents in the specialty. So normally the residents are going to be taking the really intense cases and working on the cases, and it's going to be harder as a dental student to get your hands on this kind of work. So considering what the resident's role is in all of the school structure is really important too if you're looking into specialties. Additionally, what kind of exposure to specialty procedures did dental students get here? Same sort of idea. And maybe that doesn't matter to you. Maybe you want to know about the folks in general dentistry and the commitment to the underserved, how that kind of incorporates or is played or emphasized or underemphasized in the school's functionality. So definitely just looking into specialties and if that really does make a difference. So another thing that is really big is cost. So dental school is not cheap. I can tell you that right off the bat. I think anyone who told you differently would be lying. So some things to consider with regards to cost is a public or private school. So public schools are notoriously cheaper than private schools. And another thing to consider within that is in-state versus out-of-state. So if you're in-state at a public school, it's cheaper than if you're out-of-state at a public school. If you're in-state at a private school, it's the same cost as if you're out-of-state at a private school. So that's something to kind of be mindful of when you're looking into costs of attendance. Also, does the school offer in-state tuition after the first year? So for some of the state schools, public state schools, if you are an out-of-state resident and you live there and attend school there for a year, you can then apply for residency in that state and get in-state tuition. So that's something to consider too, as kind of like a loophole or rabbit hole or I don't even know, roundabout way of getting the cheaper tuition if that's something that you're looking into. Cost of living in the city of the school. So that's another thing too. They give you a cost of attendance is obviously different from cost of tuition. So in the cost of attendance, bigger cities are going to have higher cost of attendance because you're going to have a higher rent to pay. You're going to have higher food. Everything's just going to be slightly more expensive in cities than if you're in like a rural kind of more suburban area. Also, different areas geographically within the country cost more than others. So just kind of considering that as well within the cost of attendance at the school. And what I found kind of helpful for this in particular would be mapping out a payment plan and seeing what works for you. So every single person, like I said, this kind of goes back into the reoccurring theme of it's very unique. The whole process of applying dental school and choosing a dental school is very unique, but mapping out a payment plan, seeing, how much debt do I want to be in? What money do I have to allot to dental school? How much money am I willing to pay? Is that going to make or break my experience? What's like how quickly do these alumni pay off their debts? There's just a lot of different considerations in that specific regard. So I found it really helpful to map out a payment plan of kind of where exactly I stood and kind of figure out around, you're obviously not going to get it right because you're applying. You're not actually like attending yet, but kind of figuring out around what range was I looking for. And that kind of helped me decide whether or not it really mattered to me or not. Also, this step may not be a driver for you. You might say, hey, look, dental school's really expensive and I'm going to be in a lot of debt, but people pay it off, they make it work, and I'm going to do it. And I don't want that to be a deciding factor. So throw it to the wayside. And that's the same as all of the other regards that we've talked about today and that where I'm going to continue talking about it is all very, like I said, unique to you, and really decide what to prioritize and what not to prioritize based on your own personal experiences and your own personal situations. Another thing is dual degree options. So this is obviously, I guess, if you're only interested in achieving a dual degree, but if you're interested in earning an additional degree while in dental school, does the program offer you the chance to do that? So examples like this include PhDs, MPH, Masters in Public Health, MBAs, Business, Masters in Education, etc., which are really cool opportunities. And so kind of looking into those programs to see if that would work, or if you were really passionate about that, if you're really passionate about research, you want to get your PhD, if you're really passionate about public health, and you want to get your master's, if you're really passionate about business, and you really want to pursue the business aspect of it, kind of really critically thinking about what you're passionate about, and if you want to incorporate something else into your dentistry experience, your dentistry, your dental school experience, looking into that and finding schools that offer you the capabilities to do that. Also kind of read the fine print within that too, because some of them have additional costs, some of them have additional years of school. So just really critically, again, like I said, taking that whole picture into account when choosing if you want to pursue that option or not. Clinical experiences. So this is also a really cool thing to consider. Again, it might not be prioritized in your mind, but if it is, your clinic experience is something to think about. So when do you get in, like when do you, your class, your cohort, get into clinics? So what year do they start putting you on the floor to see patients? That really, really ranges from school to school, which is why it's something cool to consider if you think about it. How much exposure do you have to clinic do you have? So are you like in half clinic for 2 years and then full clinic for a year, or are you in full clinic for 3 years, or are you in half clinic for 2 years and then clinic for a year, or are you half clinic for half a year and then clinic for a year? There's a variety of different ways of how much exposure to clinic have, but that's something to definitely consider and to take into account when you're looking at different schools. How does the clinic function? So there's different dynamics in the clinic for. So are you put into a team? Are you put into how many faculty to dental student ratios you have? Do you work underneath a third year, or do you work underneath an assisting, or do you assist, or what's the dynamic of the clinic for, and how does that operate? That's something to consider as well when you're thinking about clinic experience. And then how much hands-on clinic time do you get versus sim lab experience? So what's the sim lab to clinic ratio? So are you in sim lab for a year and then you're in clinic? Are you in sim lab for 6 months and you're in sim lab while you're also in clinic? Are you in sim lab for 2 years perfecting your art and then going in clinic in your third year? Like what's the clinic to sim lab experience? And that's something to consider too, because as a student, you may want more sim lab experience before you get hands-on experience with patients, to make sure you know that you're adequately prepared and that you're very functional and proficient in what you're about to do. Or would you rather just get in a clinic and you want to see some action and you want to take it out hands-on, take the bull by the horns? Again, just another consideration. And then what's the preparation for clinic, which kind of goes into that. What's the procedure in getting into clinic? Research. So research is, again, something that some people are super passionate about research, some people don't care at all about research. Again, that's something that's very unique and personal. So if you're into research, and you're going to prioritize this, consider, does a school prioritize this, emphasize research? So some schools are really heavy research focused, and they really push the PhD route. They really push the research. Other schools don't have a research focus at all. So kind of figuring out which ones are focused on research and which ones aren't would be a good place to start. And then kind of looking into what are the research opportunities. So are there labs that you can get into? When can you get into them? Do you have to wait until you're an upperclassman? Do you have to wait till your second year? Can you start your first year? How do you get in, and what's the rate at which students can get in if they want to? Also looking at the kind of research that's being conducted there is also a really good place to start if you're really interested in research, to kind of get a feel for the types of labs that you could be exposed to. Also talking about what kind of opportunities and grants they have if you wanted to start your own research, and how that process might look if you don't align with the research that's already being conducted there. Also, similarly, what kind of faculty research is being conducted. So that kind of gives you an insight too into what kind of mentors and guidance you would have from the faculty who would be probably overseeing your research and helping you and guiding you in your research experience at the school. So student life / outside of the school. So let's see. Okay, get on battery life. I was afraid that it was going to die on me. So student life / outside the school. So this, I know a lot of people don't think that you necessarily might have to consider this when you're choosing a dental school, which I think is silly, because I think everything else is extremely, extremely important, because ultimately you are choosing the school to go to school, right? Like that's your job. It's quote unquote your 9 to 5. But with that being said, you need to also be able to prioritize your mental well-being and your social well-being, and kind of find a place that really builds you up outside of the classroom so that you can be your best self in the classroom. So with that being said, looking into student life / outside the classroom, looking into different clubs, activities, or organizations, kind of figuring out what's popular within students to kind of get a sense of if you would fit in with the student body, what kind of organizations do they offer? So is your organization that you're interested in just not popular, or is it not offered at all? That also kind of leads me to an aside. That's a really good way to kind of dive into what the student body's like, to kind of get the culture of the school, to get how the students interact, what's the camaraderie, what's the dynamic of the class, what's the cohesiveness, or what's the culture in the school, which I think is it's a hard thing to kind of pinpoint or Google, honestly. You're not going to be able to find that like in a student doctor network thread, but it is a cool place to kind of figure it out by figuring out what people are interested in, how people socialize, what the socializing is like. Is it a big cohesive unit, or do people kind of do their own little things? What's the class like? Because then ultimately you can kind of figure out what kind of people are drawn to that school and drawn to that environment, and see if you fit in with that crowd. So next is what kind of so do they have what you're interested in? Ultimately, that's like what I think is a huge portion of it. So you are mid-20s, so you kind of know what you like, what you're interested in. Obviously there's room to change and get involved in different things, but if you're really interested in something, do they have that? So I, for example, love sports. So I was always really interested, do they have intramural sports programs, or they have recreational sports programs that I can kind of join and keep up my active lifestyle, and also like find that camaraderie and find that culture of team and uniting through that. So I think that just questions like that to kind of find out where exactly the school and the community and the classmates fall is really important. So that's kind of it for all of this. Before we jump into the I'll put the discounts up so you guys can look at it. But I just wanted to quickly say, always ask questions through any of this at all. I'd love to kind of elaborate, expand, or just really dive into something more if you want more advice or tips or anything like that with going through. I know the list is always expansive and really intimidating when you're looking through schools, so definitely do not hesitate to ask or any of that. So of course, here we are at the end. So the 10% off code again for your discount to crack the DAT is Go Dental School 10. And again, as always, we're going to announce the 50% off winner via DM. So keep a lookout for that. But always feel free to use the 10% off code. It's an awesome way to save money and kind of get some good discounts and some savings as you gear up for your DAT and all things dental school. That's it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope that today was helpful as always. Keep asking questions. I'm definitely here to be a resource as much as I can, and I'd love to help in any way.